let us go to a forest on a mountain in Sweden. And robber mother lived with her 5 children with robber father in a cave. Now, robber father could not come down to town or he would be arrested and put into prison. And normally he got food by hunting, but this particular time there was no food, and robber mother had to come down with her 5 children begging in the town, and she was a ferocious woman, and no one dared argue with her. And it was one such day she was down in town, and they came to the cloisters, like where the monks lived. She knocked on the door, and they let down a basket with loaves of bread in, because no one dared refuse her. But her children had found a little gate at the back of the cloisters into the garden. And they came tugging at her and said, Mother, come see what we've found. And she went in the garden, and there was the most beautiful herb garden. And she was looking at it, and she thought it was wonderful. Then her expression changed. But just then, a lay brother from the cloisters came out. What are you doing in that? There are no women allowed in this garden. Get out. But she took no notice. What? She deaf? Get out. And he got up and he started shaking her, and well, she was, as I say, a ferocious woman. She laid him out on the ground, and he ran back and he got 2 big monks out, and they started shouting at her, and then she attacked both of them. And at that point, Abbot Hans came out to see what all the noise was about. And he told everyone to be quiet. What are you doing attacking this woman? She just wants to look at my herb garden. Did you ever see anything so magnificent? And robber mother said, well, when I first saw it, yeah, I thought, this is beautiful. But then it's not nearly as beautiful as a garden I know. What, said the lay brother? Nothing is as beautiful as this garden. The Abbot Hans has travelled the whole country looking for herbs for his garden, and there is nothing like it in the whole country. Yeah, well, have you not heard of the Christmas Eve forest in the mountains? The Christmas Eve garden that comes in the mountains, in the forest. Well, the lay brother was about to just carry on when Abbot Hans just told him, be quiet. Tell me more. All his life he had heard about the Christmas Eve garden in the forest, and he'd never get a chance to see it. He would love to have seen it. And he said, could you send a child down on Christmas Eve to lead me up to the forest? She was going to say no at first, but then her pride, she wanted to show off of her beautiful Christmas Eve garden. And so she said, yes, but you must only bring 1 companion with you. And don't tell anyone about this. Well, he did manage to keep to himself until the Archbishop Absalon came down. And, well, please, we should maybe send a letter of forgiveness to robber father, and then he could come down and live with us in the town, or else we'll have 5 more robber children if they grow up the same. And Father Absalon said, yeah, well, but I can't go forgiving robbers. What are you talking about? And then the abbot said, but if God feels that he could show this Christmas Eve garden to these robbers, to these criminals, who are we to condemn them? And the Archbishop, as cynical as ever, said, well, if you can bring me a flower from the garden, I'll forgive as many robbers as you want. Next Christmas Eve, they're led up the mountains. The boy comes down. It's a hard slog, and the lay brother is really worried about the old man, but they make it up to the cave. They go through forests, through bogs, through marshes, until eventually they come to a boarded up cave in the mountains. And the boards are pulled aside, and Robber Mother said, come in and bring your horses too, or else they'll freeze to death out here. So they're talking away at the fire, and even Robber Father is joining in. Well, he's got his back to the bishop as if he's not understanding, or he's got his back to the abbot as if he can't understand, he's not interested, but they're talking away, and the abbot says, well, if I can take a flower back to the archbishop, then you'll get a letter of forgiveness and you can come down and live like ordinary people in the town. And Robber Father said, well, I tell you what, I doubt if that's ever going to happen, but if you do that, I promise that I will never rob anyone again. And just then, there was the sound of birds. They said, we're missing the garden. And they went out, and it was light. It was like the middle of the day, and the snow had melted, and there was green grass, and there were beautiful flowers coming up, and birds flying around, and a flock of starlings with gold and with red tips to their wings, and all manner of birds, and there were raspberries growing, and the children were eating the raspberries and the strawberries, and even a bear came to eat. And Robber Father said, look, you tapped it on the nose and said, go away, find your own place, this is mine. Go and find your own patch to eat. And the bear sort of trotted off quite happily. And all the while, the abbot is looking in wonder. But the lay brother, he didn't believe it. He thought it's the work of the devil. While the abbot is deciding which flower to pick, he can feel the angels coming down, and he can hear the carols they're singing, and he can feel almost their wings on his face. And at that moment, a dove decided to be brave enough to land on the lay brother. No birds are dead. I mean, everyone else was covered in birds and butterflies, but all the other birds had stayed clear of the lay brother. But as this dove landed on the lay brother, he said, get away, go back to the devil. And with that, the flowers shrunk, the birds disappeared, the angels went away. And the abbot collapsed on the ground. But as he was collapsing, he remembered his promise, and he was digging round, and he was just grasping for something. Well, they all went back to the cave, and they realized the abbot wasn't with them, so they went back and they got the old abbot's body and took him back. And he was taken back down the hillside. And the lay brother realized that he'd been that close, that the old man had that close to having angels land on him and sing to him. And because it was his fault they'd gone away, that's what had killed the old man. But when they were getting the old man ready for burial, they opened his hand, and there was a bulb. And the lay brother planted that bulb, and all year he tended it, and he tended the flower, and nothing seemed to happen. But suddenly, at Christmas, it burst into life, and there was the most beautiful rose bush, with beautiful roses on it. And he took one, he remembered the abbot's promise, and he took one to Archbishop Absalon, and Archbishop Absalon wrote a letter of forgiveness and pardon, and the lay brother was taken up the mountain. He remembered the way. And when he knocked on the door, Robber Father said, what are you doing here? It's your fault. There was no Christmas Eve garden this year in the forest. He said, I've just come to give you this letter of forgiveness. And the Robber Father said, well, The old abbot kept his word. I shall keep mine. And he went down his children and his wife, and they lived a good life and a productive life down in the town. And as for the lay preacher, the lay brother, he spent the rest of his life tending the abbot's herb garden.